Streamcast.
Hello, I'm Isaac from Streamcast, and today we're going to be talking about the Stranger. And spoiler alert, he's also known as Baldur, the beloved child of Odin and Frigg, and for the purposes of God of War, Frigg and Freya will be one and the same. Additionally, for the purposes of God of War, he's not quite the person you know from the mythology. He's not beloved by everyone, he's actually a bit of a dick, he actually kind of sucks. And we'll be recapping the part he played in God of War and going over the aspects of his character from the mythology and how that was blended into the game. And it goes without saying, if you haven't played God of War yet, please do so because this video will be full of spoilers. Now let's get into it. The Stranger, otherwise known as Baldur, was the child of Odin and Freya in Norse mythology. He was loved by all things minus Kratos of course, but we'll get to that later. Baldur was having terrible nightmares, so he goes to mum and dad for help, and his mum and dad just so happen to be two of the most powerful people in all the 9 realms. Hearing this, Odin turns to a powerful wise woman for advice, who informs him that Hel is preparing for his son, Hel being the place all things go to when they die if they did not die in battle. Odin informs his wife of the news, and she does what any mother would do to keep her child safe. Remember how all things love Baldur? Well, Freya decides to speak to all things, and asks and gets them to promise not to harm her son. She speaks to animals, she speaks to trees, she speaks to rocks, she even speaks to disease and asks them to promise not to hurt her child, to which they all oblige. However, she overlooked mistletoe, thinking it too young, too small, too weak to ever hurt her child, and therefore does not acquire the promise from mistletoe. Now in hindsight, that was pretty stupid, as the gods lived for a long time. The goddess Idun periodically goes around to the gods, giving them these apples that restore their life and their vigour. So while the gods did live a long time, they weren't exactly immortal. They needed these apples to stay alive. Frigg informs the other gods that her son cannot be harmed. So, as you do, they all take turns trying to harm Baldur, cheering every single time they fail. And it's at this point that Santa Monica diverge from the mythos, as they explore the time between Baldur getting his powers and Baldur's death. In the myths, Loki tricks Freya into telling him what can hurt her son. He transforms into a woman, strikes up a conversation with Freya and says to her, "So can nothing really harm your son?" And Freya, in what must have been arrogance, decides to tell this random old woman the exact thing that can hurt her son. I'm sure you'd come to recognize everyone in Asgard. This random woman, surely it's got to be Loki playing a trick. If there's someone you don't recognize, if there's something that's just slightly off, if there's something that does not seem right, it is probably Loki. It's always been Loki. Learn from this and just leave the situation. But no, she decides to... I digress. Freya decides to tell her, and well, if she didn't, we wouldn't have this mythos. So thanks for being stupid. So yeah, gods aren't too intelligent, apart from Mimir of course, who was the wisest of the gods. Then again, he did get his head chopped off, so how smart is he really? Now all the gods are having fun, trying to kill Baldur. That is a weird family function. And Hod, who is Baldur's blind brother, is quite sad he can't join in the festivities. Loki comes along to help Hod. Now, Loki doesn't help anyone. Loki is fully in it for himself, which makes me question why he hasn't been kicked out of Asgard yet. It's true, Loki does solve a lot of the problems the gods have, but it's also true that Loki causes all of the problems the gods have. But you know what, as I've alluded to earlier, they're not very bright, are they, these gods? So Loki decides to, try and help Hod and get him involved in the festivities. He says, "Hod, what's wrong?" And Hod confides in Loki. He wants to join in the fun. He wants to join in, trying to hurt his brother and join in the just sounds weird. I'm sad because I'm not hurting my brother. Hey, the gods are weird. Anyways, Loki decides to help Hod. Loki hands Hod a dart made out of mistletoe. That's right, Loki finds out Baldur's weakness, goes out, procures some mistletoe, creates a weapon out of it, and hands it to Hod, the blind brother of Baldur, who just wants to join in at the fun. Even helps him throw the dart. So nice. Hod throws the dart, and there is silence. Baldur drops to the floor, dead. Now I think it's pertinent to say the Baldur we know is not loved by all things. This is due to many years of being desensitized. In the mythology, Baldur is only made invulnerable to pain. However, in the God of War 2018 game, he cannot physically feel. He has no sense of touch, and he'll never be able to feel intimacy. Not being able to feel has stripped him of the joys of life, and he's become bitter, hateful, and resentful. But most importantly, it's made him a great antagonist, and we've got a really great series of boss fights out of it. So I think it was worth it. I mean, not for Baldur, or his mother, or his family, or anyone close to him, but hey, Baldur's got a game of the year under his belt. How many other gods can say that? Midway through the game, Atreus, Kratos, and Baldur are all transported to Hell, and it's here we get to see one of Baldur's memories with his mother. He tells her he can't feast, he can't drink, he can't even feel the temperature of the room, which honestly, if you live in London, isn't such a bad thing, especially in the winter. As Baldur witnesses visions of his past self, he calls his past self weak and a coward for not being able to kill someone who he loved. As at this point in the story, Baldur wants nothing more than the death of his mother, and we get to see a stage where Baldur actually did care about his mother and pleaded with her to take this curse away from him. He was still on speaking terms with her, and he wanted to try and resolve something, whereas she, on the other hand, only cared about his physical safety and not necessarily his mental well-being. Santa Monica really know how to write troubled families. Patricide in the first game, well, more than patricide, Kratos basically killed all his aunts and uncles. Kratos had to deal with killing his wife and child, the two people he loved most in the world. Kratos had to relive this when he met Pandora in God of War 3 and had to struggle with her death. And now again we've got troubled Baldur, but also we've got Kratos trying to piece together how to be a father. There's no YouTube, there's no self-help books, none of that. It's just, how do I make my son not hate me, but also make him better? But you know what, he's really trying, and you know, I respect that. In the vision, Baldur walks away and says he never wants to see his mother again. And in the years between this point and where we are in the game now, it's clear that, you know, all that bitterment and resentment like really builds, and all that the love he once had for her turns into hate. He only wants her dead now. The dynamic between Baldur and Freya heavily mirrors the dynamic between Kratos and his father, Zeus. Their motivations may have been different, but they still wanted the death of their parent. I think Kratos does see a lot of himself in Baldur. They both have tattoos. Admittedly, Baldur does have cooler ones, but like Kratos, Baldur has a one-track mind and only wants the death of Freya. Sound familiar? Kratos wanted the death of Zeus. Although Kratos got what he wanted, however, it left him feeling nothing. It didn't resolve any of the trauma or hurt that he felt. Atreus, who we find out to be Loki, stays true to the mythology and causes Baldur to lose his invulnerability, but he doesn't kill him. He stays true to mythology and gets someone else to do his dirty work for him, Kratos. During the final boss fight, Atreus and Kratos team up to stop Baldur from killing his mother Freya, and in a weirdly wholesome bonding moment, Kratos and Atreus team up to beat Baldur senseless. Baldur strikes Atreus in the chest, hitting a piece of mistletoe that Kratos used to fix Atreus' bowstring. Baldur gets high off the fact that he can feel again, but at this point it's not enough to have this curse taken away from him. All those years of isolation, not being able to empathize with anyone, they're still there, that hurt is still there, and he still wants the death of his mother. He still wants his vengeance, leaving Kratos with no choice but to snap his neck. And with his vulnerability gone, there's no resurrection for Baldur. Speaking of resurrection, you fight Baldur earlier in the game, you snap his neck there too, and you know, you think he's dead, but he comes back. During this, you throw him off a cliff, and obviously the player can never see this, but if you do a certain boundary break and you look off the cliff where Baldur falls, before he is deloaded from the map, he gives the player the finger, which I think was pretty cool and quite true to Baldur's character. I feel like he'd, you know, flip someone off who killed them. Actually, I feel like most people would flip the person off who killed them. Yeah, I'd definitely give the person who killed me a middle finger. I hope no one kills me. At this point, Baldur's story comes to an end, but it does signify the start of Ragnarok. And just like the previous games, there are consequences for killing a god, such as when Hermes was killed in God of War 3, releasing a plague to the world. And Ragnarok, the long winter, might be the best thing that Kratos has unleashed upon the world, as it sets up the next game really well. So Kratos has just killed the son of one of the most powerful women in all the 9 realms. She is the head of the Vanir and also the head of the Valkyries, and she has been scorned. We've experienced her backstory, we are the reason for her pain, and I can't wait to see how this plays out in the next game. There is an optional side quest in the game where you save all the Valkyries by killing them. Well, they thank you at the end of it, so I guess you've done the right thing. And I want to see how this plays out, because obviously you've now pissed off their ex-leader, who they are all probably still quite loyal to, but you also saved them from Odin. I like the fact that in the next game we'll start with a deep connection to one of the potential antagonists in Freya, but maybe she'll forgive us. Either way, I think this will make a great narrative for the next game. And, you know, Baldur led to that. What they did was they took Baldur, beloved by the gods, could do no wrong, and made him into this villain that was the precursor for a better villain in the next game. And I cannot wait for that. Speaking of Freya and the Valkyries, we'll be going over each Valkyrie and their queen on the next episode. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to leave a like. If you did like, why not consider subscribing? And, you know, leave any comments on, you know, any gods you'd like to see us cover next. That's all from me. Have a nice day, guys. Hello and welcome to the Streamcast. My name is Isaac, and today we're going to be talking about the Norse god Mimir. Unlike the previous episode, we'll be going over his role in God of War and the aspects of his character taken from Norse mythology. A Midsummer Night's Dream is a play written by Shakespeare. It involves the mysterious fairy who serves the fairy king Oberon. In one timeline, said fairy travels to Midland where he meets the Black Swordsman Guts. In another timeline, he travels to Midgard where he meets Odin. Berserk is a dark world devoid of happiness for the most part, with a protagonist that is constantly fighting against causality. So I think it's safe to say that Midgard is the preferred choice. This matches up to one of Mimir's stories where he tells us he used to be the Fairy King's errand boy.
I couldn't have been much older than you when I started. A Fairy King's errand boy and unofficial jester. By night, my mates and I had the run of the forest. Good fellows they called us, never spites to the last. We'd get up to all manner of mischief, making fools of the local mortals. But as long as our lord was kept amused, we were spared the consequences. Then one day he was not amused, and I saw fit to move on.
However, in Norse mythology, Mimir is most likely a Jotun, as his sister, Bestla, also a Jotun, was Odin's mother. Mimir joins the Aesir gods who serve under Odin and plays the role of advisor for Odin. During this time, the Aesir and the Vanir tire of a war and decide to make peace with each other. Vanaheim, home of the Vanir, and Asgard, home of the Aesir, do a trade, swapping some of their best warriors for another. Vanaheim send over Freya and Njord, and the Aesir send over Honir and Mimir. Unfortunately, Honir is revealed to be lacking in value and can only make wise decisions when Mimir is there to counsel him. The Vanir feel like they have been cheated, so cut Mimir's head off and send it back to Asgard. Odin, a known hoarder of knowledge, doesn't want to lose Mimir's wisdom, so rubs herbs on Mimir's severed head and chants incantations on it to prevent it from rotting, keeping Mimir somewhat alive. When we first meet Mimir, he's encased within a tree in front of the last known portal to Jotunheim, telling Odin's sons and Baldur to leave in a not so polite fashion.
Your father won't let me go, Baldur, and he won't let you kill me. You have nothing to offer me, so take your questions, take your threats, take these two worthless wankers, and piss off!
Now, while Odin won't let Mimir be killed, Kratos doesn't much care for Odin and lops off Mimir's head at Mimir's request, of course. Kratos is not a monster.
Gods on high, save me from this barbarian! Please! Please! No. No!
Kratos proceeds to take Mimir's head to the Witch of the Woods, who, spoiler alert, is Freya, and she reanimates him. She reanimates him in the same way Odin does in mythology, with herbs and incantations, and proceeds to spit in his face. I really like the way Mimir is reincarnated, as it's the same way Odin revives Mimir in the Norse mythology, and it serves as a link between Odin and Freya, as in this game, the lore is Freya taught Odin how to use certain spells and incantations. Mimir goes on to help Kratos and Atreus in their quest from this point on, and becomes the fourth head to help Kratos on his journey. Difference being, this time, it's a willing head. The first three being Medusa's head, the head of Euryale, and the head of Helios. Mimir goes on to give helpful advice throughout the game to further the story, but more on that later. God of War is a semi-open world game, or a wide linear game according to Cory Barlog, which basically means you're put in a large world and can only do certain things at certain times. It gives the illusion of an open world game, whilst only letting the player progress to certain areas at certain times. This is done well with the lowering of the water levels in the Lake of Nine hub area in Midgard, which opens up new areas as you further progress in the game. Why do I bring this up? Well, a large part of traversal in God of War is done by boat, which involves zero combat, which can get boring, but this takes us nicely back to Mimir. During these boat sections, Mimir will give exposition on the game, be it characters' backstories, motivation, world history, and so on. This is done in a non-intrusive way that's really enjoyable. In fact, when testing the game, playtesters would just stop in the boat, which worried the devs, but turns out they just wanted to finish hearing Mimir's stories. So, because of this, the devs implemented a feature where if you left the boat mid-conversation, Mimir would start up again from where he left off when you got back in. A really nice touch. These lore dumps really bring the story together and further bring context to your journey. We learn why Freya cannot leave Midgard, and Odin uses Freya's own Vanya magic against her to trap her. He also robbed her of a warrior spirit. Freya cannot fight, even to defend herself. No living thing may she harm by blade nor spell, which explains why she lives alone. Midgard isn't very safe, and if you can't fight back, well, don't leave your house. But in the God of War Ragnarok trailer, we see Freya with a sword in hand attacking Kratos, which means she somehow breaks this curse and she gets her warrior spirit back from Odin. Does this mean she makes a deal with Odin? Surely if she could have broken the curse on her own, she would have done so already, which only leaves some sort of interaction with Odin. Mimir also gives us background into his life. He describes that he's not from the Nine Realms and served another master. Mimir was a fairy king's errand boy and unofficial jester. He then speaks of how he entered these lands meaning the Nine Realms. He changed his name and moved north. And I personally think his name used to be Puck. Mimir gives sage advice throughout the game, and when they recover his eye, he's able to open a path to Jotunheim for them. Mimir is instrumental to our journey, as he not only leads us in the right direction and offers great counsel, like when he instructs Kratos to tell Atreus about the boy's true nature, he's also quite literally the key to get to Jotunheim. Due to Mimir being trusted by the giants, he's given Bifrost crystal eyes that allow him to travel to Jotunheim, which in turn allows Kratos and Atreus to spread Faye's ashes. However, the story may not have gone so smoothly. Before the procedure, he drank 16 cups of ale to stop the transplant from being painful. Drank so much in fact that he almost convinced them to plant them in his nipples during his inebriation. So remember, drink responsibly before surgery. Actually, maybe don't drink at all before surgery. I'm gonna keep this section super short because I only got one thing to say, but at the end of the game, Brock and Sindri, and I quote, take an uncomfortable number of measurements when looking after Mimir's head at the end of the game. Could they be making him an artificial body? Be pretty interesting to see. And you have to remember that Mimir is also a god, so if he gets an artificial body, you know, he might become a really powerful ally to fight along with. Although, judging from the trailer where we see him on a little headstand reading a book, I don't see that happening. But I thought it was an interesting little line. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to leave a like. If you did like, why not consider subscribing? And, you know, leave any comments on, you know, any gods you'd like to see us cover next. That's all from me. Have a nice day, guys. Hello and welcome to the Streamcast. My name is Isaac, and today we will be talking about the Norse god Tyr. There are two characters you don't see throughout the game, but their influence can be felt permeating through the world, the first being Odin and the second being Tyr. With Odin, you see his ravens watching you. You hear of the terrible deeds he's done to Mimir, Freya, the Valkyries, and probably a lot more people. I honestly don't believe anyone has a nice thing to say about the man. On the other hand, we have Tyr, who, unlike the other gods, was beloved by all, including the giants who hated the gods, due to the deeds of the god's mightiest warrior, Thor, otherwise known as the Fat Dobber by Mimir.
The fat dauber.
And even though Tyr does not make an appearance in the game, he leads the way forward for Kratos and Atreus. He provides them the key to get to Jotunheim, which is hidden by a very elaborate set of puzzles, which include hiding the gate to Jotunheim in the space between realms. Helpful gods in the God of War series are few and far between, and are usually some of the most interesting characters in the series. Pre-God of War 1, you had Ares, who bestowed you with your blades of chaos, but pointed your rage and fury in the direction of your family, causing Kratos to kill his wife and daughter, and setting you on your path to vengeance. Wow. God of War 1, 2 and 3, we had Athena guiding us, but ultimately for her own selfish reasons. And in God of War Ascension, we had Orcos, who is probably the only friend we see Kratos make. And spoiler alert, Kratos has to kill him. Actually, to be fair, Kratos seems quite fond of the last Spartan in God of War 2. Whatever happened to that guy? Believe it or not, Tyr is also the god of war. He's the Norse god of war. One of his notable tales includes the child of Loki, Fenrir. Fenrir was a wolf that the gods feared, and while they sent away Loki's other two children, Hel was sent to Hel to become its ruler, and Jormungandr was tossed into the sea, where he grew so large he encircled all of Midgard. Fenrir was locked in a stronghold on Asgard so the gods could keep watch of him. Only one god dared to approach the wolf to feed him: Tyr. Hold on. So the gods were scared of this wolf that was growing in strength. Maybe stop feeding it or just kill it. The gods were okay with Thor's genocide of the giants. What's one wolf? The gods wanted to chain up Fenrir, but Fenrir wasn't stupid, so they disguised their scheme as a test of strength. In doing so, Fenrir allowed the gods to chain him up so he could break out and prove how strong he was. Fenrir broke every chain, so the gods decided to enlist the help of the dwarves, who were master craftspeople. The dwarves created a ribbon made from the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. They named the ribbon Gleipnir. Odin brought Gleipnir to Fenrir. However, Fenrir was no fool and saw through Odin's deception. He would agree to the challenge if one of the gods placed their hand in his mouth. A reluctant Tyr agreed to do so, and after they bound Fenrir, it was clear that Fenrir could not escape. The gods roared with laughter, and Fenrir looked at Tyr, who whispered, "Do it." Fenrir bit off Tyr's hand, and the gods left Fenrir tied up. But Fenrir vowed to eat the sun, the moon, and kill Odin. I'm glad Tyr didn't die, but Fenrir really should have asked for a god's head in his jaws as insurance instead of just an arm. Better yet, Odin's head. Odin would take advantage of Tyr once again. And to help me tell this story, I've enlisted my good friend, Mimir.
There was an incident shortly after the forging of Mjolnir, when Tyr arranged a diplomatic meeting between Odin and the giant kings. Well, this was when the Long War was young, when victory was still a thing dreamed of, and the Jotnar might have tipped the balance between Aesir and Vanir. Odin had persuaded Tyr that the hammer was merely a deterrent, a means to broker peace from a position of strength. Tyr was hopeful to convince all parties they would prosper best through peace. He knew the giants were deeply concerned about the hammer, a super weapon in hands they did not trust. But they trusted Tyr. Tyr always believed the best in people, and taking Odin at his word in his desire for peace, he brought the Raven King to Jotunheim. From there, things unravelled quickly. The giants anticipated Odin's trickery and exposed his true agenda to spy and steal their secret wisdom. With magics, they expelled Odin from their realm and cursed him never to return. Frustrated, Odin visited his fury upon the giants of Midgard. Thor unleashed Mjolnir's might upon any giant he could find. None could stand against the tide of slaughter that followed. And at last, it seems, with Tyr's aid, they retreated. The tower disappeared, no giants could be found in Midgard, and no man nor god has set foot in Jotunheim since.
The events that transpired would probably lead to the imprisonment of Tyr, as Tyr helped the remaining giants escape. You see, Tyr was a man who wanted peace. He would travel and speak with other cultures. He used his powers with wisdom and for good, according to Mimir. This can be seen in his vault, as we see the Eye of Horus symbol from Egypt, the Omega from Greece, the Celtic symbol, and a Japanese symbol. Mimir held Tyr in high regard, believing him to be a great leader who did not want power and control like Odin did, but knowledge and understanding. And every time we hear of Tyr, he is spoken of fondly or has devised a clever trick to keep the giants safe. In essence, he's quite the opposite of Odin, so much so that Odin had him locked up and told the world he died. While Odin wants to hoard knowledge and power, Tyr freely shares it. Mimir has said that Tyr tries to see the best in people, and this can clearly be seen in his interaction with the Fenrir's wolf. Honestly, Fenrir should have asked for Odin's head between his jaws instead of an open invitation from one of the gods to put their hand in the wolf's mouth. Tyr paid with his arm, an arm we see in the trailer. This means Odin hasn't gone to the dwarves yet to tie up the wolf. Maybe the wolf doesn't exist yet. The wolf is Loki's child after all, and in the words of Kratos, Atreus is not ready, if you know what I mean. Really looking forward to seeing Tyr's role in the game. Will there be a time skip so he can interact with Loki's children? Will Kratos and Tyr fight? Honestly, I think Tyr being portrayed as a good god, but more importantly, a god shunned by Odin, will make him a powerful ally. In God of War, there's an exchange with Helios, and Helios says, that freak has fallen from the graces of Olympus. The freak he's talking about is Hephaestus. And Kratos shoots back, that's exactly why I believe him.
You lie, Helios! Hephaestus told me the flame kills all who touch it.
And you believe him? That freak has fallen from the graces of Olympus!
That is exactly why I believe him.
I believe Tyr will have Kratos' trust, which is a rare thing for Kratos to give out. Although I still want a boss fight with Tyr that Atreus will obviously come in and break up. I'd like to see how strong the Norse God of War is firsthand. What do you think Tyr will be like? Let us know in the comments. Hello and welcome to the Streamcast. My name is Isaac, and today we'll be talking about the Norse god Freya and her Valkyries. The word Valkyrie comes from an Old Norse word, Valkyria, meaning chooser of the slain, which is what the Valkyries did. They would visit worthy warriors who died in battle and take them to Asgard, where they would join the ranks of the Einherjar. There, these fallen warriors would drink, feast, and fight to the death. Then, the next day, they would be resurrected to do it all over again. I don't even like paper cuts. I cannot imagine getting killed every day. Sounds like hell to me, but you like what you like, I guess. The Valkyries were comprised of Freya, Gunnar, Geirful, Ea, Kara, Rota, Ulrun, Gondul, Hilda, and Sigrun. Gunnar. This Valkyrie's name means war or battle. Gunnar would arrive at all battles, big or small, and her judgment of the fallen was unparalleled, making her invaluable to Odin. She was one of his favourites, and in spite of this, he still corrupted all the Valkyries, including her. It's still unknown why at this moment, but it probably has something to do with him trying to control his own fate. Maybe if Odin asked nicely, Kratos would let Odin use the Loom Chamber from God of War 2. Then again, the Loom Chamber probably isn't that powerful. Surely Kratos would have saved his family instead of using it to kill Zeus if it was. Right? Beautiful. This Valkyrie's name means spearflinger. Although she does not use one in the fight against you, opting for chakram, her wings, a scythe and her fists instead, she was the master of arms at Valhalla and was responsible for training the Einherjar. Ear. This Valkyrie's name means help or mercy. She was regarded as being a healer. The Valkyries were known as choosers of the slain. However, Eir would choose who would live and recover. Vikings were known for wanting to die in battle, so for this reason alone, Eir was probably liked by the families of Viking warriors, but not so much the Viking warriors themselves. Then again, not dying in battle meant said warriors had the chance to die in another battle, so win-win, I guess. Unless you get food poison afterwards at the victory feast, and then there's no Valhalla for you. Kara. This Valkyrie's name means wild one, but there's nothing wild about her to be honest. Low health, staggers easily, and has a small move pool. She compensates for her weakness by summoning Draugr to assist in the fight. Although, if you play on Give Me God of War difficulty, where the enemies level up and everyone is stronger, then this fight can get pretty wild. Rota. Her entire existence is for the sake of making you angry. Yes, Valhalla. She'll do this up to 3 times, but thankfully after you beat her, you'll never have to experience this again. Olrun. This Valkyrie's name means Ale Brun. After defeating her, she says Helheim will overflow with the souls of the departed and drown Midgard in a sea of vengeful corpses, and she leaves you in an attempt to fix the issue. Seeing as you get the chisel before going to Helheim and can backtrack to Elfheim to fight her, I'd say she does a pretty good job. Hell doesn't seem too full, and neither does Midgard after lowering the water levels. Just a few regretful souls offering side quests. Then again, Earth isn't as populated as it is today, so maybe that's what busy looks like in Helheim. Gondor. This Valkyrie's name means wand wielder, and while she doesn't cast any spells, she does dabble in some pyrokinesis during your fight with her. Mimir says she was so beautiful, she drove men to insanity, so Odin banned her from Midgard. Hilda. This Valkyrie's name means battle. She got on with Odin, but not so much with the other Valkyries, according to Mimir. He also went on to say she lived for conflict, and that some said she was conflict. It'll be interesting to see her role in Ragnarok, if any. Sigyn, the Queen of the Valkyries. Her name means victory rune, which is fitting as she probably tasted victory against most people during their first encounter with her. She possesses the abilities of all the other Valkyrie minus being able to summon Draugr. Freya, the ex-queen of the Valkyries, the witch in the woods, former queen of Asgard. Her name means noble woman. She was the Norse god of love, beauty and fertility, just like Aphrodite, although I doubt there will be a sex scene with her. Kratos did kill her son after all. Kinda ruins the mood. I would hope. Freya married Odin as part of an agreement to stem the war between the Vanir and the Aesir. There was a time when she was happy, but Odin was just buying time to steal all her magical secrets. Speaking of marriage, Freya was widely known to be beautiful, so the giant Thrym asked for her hand in marriage. Why ever would Freya agree to this? Well, Thrym had stolen Mjolnir, and the marriage was the only way to see the hammer return to Midgard. Freya hated Odin, and Thrym was clearly worthy if he could steal Mjolnir. Maybe a second marriage wouldn't have been so bad. Regardless, Freya was not on board, so a plan was devised. Thor would dress as Freya and attend the wedding in her stead, but once Thor was close enough to the weapon, Thor retrieved it and killed all the giants. Freya was spared another unwanted marriage. As you play God of War, you see the souls of people with unfinished business handing out tasks in Midgard. We also see the souls of the dead wandering around hell. But why is this? Odin strips Freya of her position as Valkyrie Queen and places a curse on the Valkyries, locking them in mortal bodies, which is not a Valkyrie's natural state. It causes them to go mad. This was done out of spite, as whatever Sigrun did was never good enough for Odin. Maybe Odin wasn't happy with the quality of warriors the Valkyries brought back, and so decided to cut his losses and turn the Valkyries into killing machines by corrupting them. Odin did want more warriors to fight by his side along the ranks of the Inheritor, and the Valkyries are by far some of the strongest opponents you'll face in the game. Fortunately for Midgard, Alfheim, Niflheim and Muspelheim, the 4 realms where you can face these Valkyries, Sigyn sealed her Valkyries away. Unfortunately, she too succumbed to the corruption, but it's a testament to how strong she was that she was even able to go toe-to-toe with other Valkyries and subdue them. There's a reason why she was able to take Freya's place as Queen of the Valkyries. This wasn't enough for Odin though, and he cursed Freya, rendering her unable to leave Midgard or harm another living creature. It's no wonder she lives as a recluse. She wouldn't be able to protect herself. As the game ends, Freya is left with nothing. Odin took everything from her powers, her Valkyries, her passport. Additionally, her son had rejected her as well, but she found some semblance of peace and took comfort in the fact that her son could not be harmed. Then Kratos comes along and takes even that away, creating the secondary antagonist for the sequel. I think it's really cool how both antagonists in Ragnarok are built up, Odin through whispers and stories of his cruelty, whereas Freya, you see it unfold and you yourself are partly responsible. Partly because Freya kinda set up her son to be a sociopath. And if you want to know more about that, check out our Baldur video, linked in the description. I genuinely think anything could happen, but I really do hope they expand on Freya and the Valkyries, especially as the end of the game and the post-game deals heavily with these characters, and it'll be good to get some closure. I think Freya is going to begrudgingly join forces with Kratos and Atreus, as Odin is the real villain and they both have beef with him. There is a mural that shows the death of Kratos, and if this were to happen, I can see a quiet finale where Atreus and Freya live in peace, so long as Freya wasn't the one to end Kratos. Ragnarok has to happen. The game is called Ragnarok after all. We know the battle between Thor and the World Serpent sends the Serpent back in time, and following the lore, Ragnarok is where these two fight. So I'm curious to see how Santa Monica will fit in Freya and the Valkyrie story, build upon Tyr and Angrboda, and set it up so the World Serpent is born and we see Ragnarok. It just doesn't seem like they can fit all of that into one game, so obviously they'll be taking liberties with the lore and creating a more original story, and I'm looking forward to this. Additionally, at the end of Ragnarok, it is said Baldur and his brother Hod will return from hell to play a game together and recount the events of all that had transpired. Maybe Freya will get another shot at being a better parent. Thanks for watching, and enjoy Ragnarok when it releases later this year.